Hello everyone! Thanks so much for coming today. Today I have a very special guest. We have one of Santa's helpers, came all the way here to visit. Thanks for being here.
Well, it's good to be here.
So Santa, are you an avid reader? What do you kind of do on your time off?
I've been known to spend time reading. There's quite a bit of extra time around the North Pole after we've done our 1 day's worth of work.
Nice. So starting December 26th, you're reading quite a bit.
Right. That's correct.
We know what to get Santa for Christmas. Well, what are your favorite genres?
Oh, I like historical fiction, even though we'll mention the books. The first one on my list probably isn't too historical. It doesn't go back so terribly far in time.
Well, what are your maybe top 3 favorite books if you had to pick 3?
Well, I've always enjoyed reading Alas, Babylon. A friend walked up to me in the library one day when I was in high school and he said, "Start reading here." And I did, and I'm going, oh my gosh. And so then that got me started to read the book.
Really?
And I've probably read it 8 or 10 times.
8 or 10 times?
Yeah,
Wow.
I pretty well know how the story is going to go now on that one.
So that's a pretty good one. So when is that set?
In the 1950s in the United States.
So a lot more recent than
Right.
I would think when I hear Babylon.
Right.
I guess 1950s is considered historical now, I discovered. Some people say 50 or more years is historical.
You're going to make Santa's helper feel old here if you're not careful. Anyway, I've also thought of other books that I've read more than once, and one of my favorites was Pillars of the Earth, about an Englishman working on building a cathedral in the 1100s. Sounds boring, but it's an excellent book.
Well, I like medieval stories, so I probably enjoy it.
And that book has 2 sequels to it that were set in the same city. Each of them was in the 1300s and then in the 1500s, so you can see what had actually happened to the town. The stories are unrelated, so you can read any of them in any order you wanted to.
Oh,
but it's the same setting for the book. And third, James Michener's books, Centennial is the one I probably most enjoyed because it's really is about the Great Plains, eastern Colorado up to the Colorado Mountains, and it's an interesting story of how life has changed on that area too.
So besides the North Pole, what area do you spend a lot of time in? In the Great Plains? Or?
Probably in the Great Plains part of the United States, is where I've
Okay.
spent a good chunk of time through the years.
Oh, nice. So you have a connection there.
I do.
Oh, very cool. So if you're looking for Santa, he might be in the Midwest. All right.
Okay.
Well, I know that when you were growing up, it sounds like you did a lot of memorization work for school. And
It wasn't a bad word back in those days.
Memorization?
Memorization, knowing your multiplication tables was always a good thing to know. You didn't have any calculator or anything else to do it for you.
Or your smartphone.
Or your smartphone.
You were the smartphone. You were Google.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
And memorization. I also had a teacher that required memorization of poetry on a weekly basis.
Wow.
I think maybe it's because he didn't want to work on a lesson plan for Fridays, so it was always poetry recitation day.
So yeah, which were your favorite ones?
Well, I'm just trying to think.
Because I feel like you would always say there was something you did. I can't remember.
We heard so
off the
many
top of my head.
people recite Robert Frost stopping by woods on a snowy evening, or
yeah, that one's famous.
we were talking about World War I there. I said in Flanders Field. I don't remember who wrote it. But we had some kids that would try to memorize things like The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere by Wadsworth, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and it's several pages long.
Yeah.
You were only required to memorize 12 lines.
Okay.
So it didn't have to be a long poem.
Okay.
But
Just 12.
some
But
people
still 12 lines
rose
every
to the
week.
challenge to try to
Yeah.
take on some really big ones.
Yeah.
However, if I'm watching Jeopardy, it does help me. Oftentimes I know the answers to the poetry questions probably because of the 7th grade and all the poems that we heard in a year's time.
Well, so what were some of the poems that you and your friends recited when you were in school?
Well, oftentimes I would get some either out of Childcraft
Mm-hmm.
or the Ideals magazines had some good ones if you were looking for one that had a holiday theme. But Childcraft, up in that one, I could probably think of when Grandpa dropped his glasses once in a pot of dye, and when he saw him put them on again, he saw a purple sky. Have you ever remember
That
reading
does sound kind of familiar.
Don't know that
yeah.
I could recall the rest of it, but I can
That's
always
pretty
remember
good.
how that one started.
Oh, nice. Right. I remember in college I was studying French literature, and we had to memorize some lines of French poetry, and even in high school, I think. Les ongles longs, des violons, de l'automne. I think I remembered it because there was violin in the poem.
We also heard Little Orphan Annie. Do you remember
Okay.
that?
Yes.
Come to our house to stay to wash
For
the cups
Halloween.
and saucers and brush the crumbs away.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember who wrote that.
I don't remember who wrote it, but I know it was one that my grandma used to read to me at Halloween.
That one came up quite often too.
Yes.
Trees by Joyce Kilmer.
I'm not sure if I knew that one.
I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree.
Oh, okay. That sounds kind of familiar. Do you think it still would be helpful for students to be memorizing? I know you...
I've worked some in the local schools, and I know that and English teachers have sometimes made them memorize a short section of Shakespeare or something, and of course the kids think that's just awful to have to work on that these days.
But it really does stick in your head.
It does stick.
I frequently need the melody to go along with it to help me remember, or at least the cadence,
I never recited it, but the cremation of Sam McGee, there's you a poem to read. That
sounds somewhat terrifying.
But it's an unusual one.
Yep.
The Deacon's Masterpiece, or The Wonderful One Hachée, that was always an interesting one too. My grandmother liked that one.
Okay. So was she an avid reader as well?
Oh yes.
Okay. She read a lot.
She knew all sorts of bits of poetry too.
Oh, very nice. All right, little known fact, I actually had a lot of help from Santa on writing my recent novel, A Change in Tune. Santa, you are legendary for making a list and checking it twice, which makes him the perfect candidate for being a proofreader. So, Santa, how many times have you read this book?
I have been through your book 3 times, all the way through.
3 times.
Maybe have looked at bits and pieces more than that.
Wow. So not even just twice. Santa goes even beyond twice. 3 times. So one, I'm honored that you actually did put it up there with one of the books you've read multiple times. But how do you think that this checking twice kind of helps in proofreading and making sure your
It's
work
like
shines?
so many things. If you've worked on it continuously for a while, you may not notice what your mistake is, and you just go right over it today. If you put it aside for a while and then take another look at it, you'll go, oh, how did I miss that I needed to start a new paragraph,
Right.
put in a period or whatever your punctuation needs to be. So I've enjoyed reading it. And before Santa was helping quite so much in his prior life, I had a job where it was good for you to be sure you knew you said exactly what you wanted to say so people wouldn't misunderstand what you were talking about, which makes me be a pretty careful reader.
Yes.
And so that kind of helps with the proofreading.
Very analytical kind of approach.
Right.
Yes, that makes sense.
And it might just even, might not be anything wrong with the sentence. It might just be a formatting problem or something that's
I know you
there.
caught a couple of those too.
Right.
Yes. So it always helps to have,
Another-
any work you're doing, have an extra pair of eyes, have a proofreader,
You bet.
check your work. Now, what would you say in terms of what audience would you recommend this book for?
Well, I think it could be enjoyed by most anyone, but it is set with the main characters being of college age. So, younger adults would probably relate to it more readily because they'd be nearer that age. But you also have characters in your story that are parents and grandparents and different aspects of their lives with the younger people. So it could appeal to anybody.
Oh, thank you. That's one of the things I thought about as I was writing it, that I have musicians and different people that show up throughout the entire story, including Santa shows up in the Christmas scene. So, yes. So that was kind of fun. And the Gigi characters that kind of really bring a lot of life, I think. And Gigi will show up some more in book 2. So,
yes. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Santa, do you have any advice for people who might want to delve into reading this holiday season, or maybe starting December 26th?
Well, you need to find something that you enjoy reading. And so if you visit a local bookstore or national bookstore, I'm sure there'll be a section that's on types of things that you find of interest. So take a look in there and see, because there's all sorts of good things to read out there.
Yes. So it's good to get off your phone for a few minutes and delve into a good book.
And it can take you off into a whole different world. You know, you can kind of forget about things that have been happening in recent months, where we've been confined, and escape to some place that an author has worked hard on developing to give you a different point of view on life.
Yes. Well, thanks so much, Santa, for being with us today.
And thanks for inviting me.
Yes, it was a pleasure. I know it's a busy season for you, so thanks for taking some time.
It's busy coming up. You're right.
Yes. Well, today's sponsor is actually my merch store. And so if you're interested in having these super awesome mugs that Santa and I have, or the fun Christmas ones, or you can even do this whole gift basket thing with both of my books for the music lover or fiction lover in your life, that would be awesome. So, thanks again, Santa.
You're welcome. Thank you.